day 2 of IBC 2024. We're here on the Bedrock streaming stand for the OTTRED live series. And this morning I've got 2 special guests with me in the studio, and we're going to be talking about maximizing ad impact. These guys are well qualified to explore the nuances of what this topic means. Their legacy in the sector means that they really appreciate where the market is now, and we're also going to be talking about the direction of travel for where things are likely to go. Tung, Tim, welcome to the OTTRED Spotlight podcast.
Hi, Chris.
Thank you.
Good to see you. How did yesterday go?
Very hectic.
Good.
Yeah, no, a very good day. Very busy, lots of good meetings.
I spoke to somebody yesterday and said, how was yesterday? How did last night go? And his response, which I think says a lot, was, I survived. So I think the undercurrent of a response like that basically shows what the mentality is of people who invest a lot of money to be here. Let's get into the topic, guys. Do you want to just do a quick introduction for anybody who isn't as familiar as I am with you guys, with who you are, where you work and what you do? Tim?
Sure. I'm Tim Sewell, I'm CEO of YoSpace. We're the dynamic ad insertion company, so we've been in the server-side ad insertion space for over a decade now, enabling monetization of some of the largest sports events. So we've just come off the back of the Euros and the Olympics, obviously, so seen some really, really significant numbers, both in terms of audience, but also the number of ad impressions that are being delivered on those premium events.
And I know from previous conversations with you, Tim, that the journey that you've been on over the last few years and seeing how densely packed the competitive horizon has become is going to mean we're going to get into some great topics with you in the course of this. Tung, welcome back.
Thank you.
We were sat here last year. For those that didn't see your episode last year, you want to reintroduce yourself?
So I'm Tung Chuan Kwang. I'm the director of AVOD and ad tech strategy at Bedrock Streaming. And I'm in charge of creating monetization opportunities for all our clients using our platforms.
Amazing. This is a topic, guys, that I've really been looking to talk about here at IBC 2024, and you could probably tell how ignited I am when we had our kind of warm-up conversation a few weeks ago. Let's get into it first of all by talking about techniques for seamlessly incorporating ad insertion. You know, I think that those who have already got a familiarity with the complexion of what this means might be interested in hearing about how the techniques involved with ad insertion have evolved over the course of the last few years and the most effective ways to do so. Tim, I've seen the logos of some of your clients and I can imagine what the nature of some of those setups have been. Kick us off. Talk about what you see from YoSpace.
Yeah. Well, I suppose firstly, a lot of people, when they think about whether it's server-sided or server-guided ad insertion, which is obviously the latest buzz, they think about the stitching component, so that the physical process of putting a stream together with the ad pod in that stream. But there's actually a lot more to it than just the stitching. It's obviously a key component, however you're doing it. But there's also all of the considerations around the ad tech ecosystem supporting programmatic efficiently, because there's kind of an expectation with our broadcasters now that in terms of viewing experience, it just works and it works at scale. Now, I have to say, not every vendor can necessarily demonstrate that they have delivered at that scale, but in terms of our customers, they just assume that it's going to work. And so the focus to some extent moves on to how do we get that extra 2% fill rate, because when you're talking about the Olympics or the Euros, there's really big money being left on the table if you're not maximising the revenue opportunities. So we're typically targeting in excess of 98% fill rates for our customers, even when they're working with programmatic. And as I say, part of that is because we've moved on from the does it work at scale, and we're now focusing on, while still delivering that consistent user experience, how do we absolutely maximise the monetization opportunity for our customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Tung, from a Bedrock perspective, where's your head on this topic?
I think that server-side insertion is a classic ways, and now we need to enhance, I would say, the CPMs of those impressions, so using programmatic, so way to ease the buy, of course, but also enhance, I would say, data enrichment. Make sure that each impression gets the most of the data of the broadcaster, of the retail, or etc. Any third-party data providers, and also enhance the experience itself. We see, I would say, resurgence of display, like L banner on a live context. So it's just not I would say sport, but really enhanced sports with QR codes, shopping abilities, etc., etc.
The scale that you mentioned a moment ago and how competitive the horizon has become, Has this become a more complex topic as things have evolved at the accelerated rate recently? Or as you've just alluded to, Tom, if simplification is one of the things you guys are trying to achieve, are you trying to achieve simplification in an increasingly complex arena?
I think from a Yospace perspective, there's a certain amount of needing to cut through the noise. So, Yospace has been doing this for a long time, and the big advantage that gives us is we've been able to focus on all of the edge case integrations, the things that you wouldn't necessarily immediately think of when you're designing a system and considering where the pinch points are going to be, what's going to impact performance. So for us, a certain amount of it is demonstrating that with the experience we have, we're best placed to be a trusted partner for our broadcast customers and help them implement features like prefetch, because even prefetch, which is the idea of starting to make the calls to the ad server ahead of time, and as I say, it doesn't matter whether that's server guided or server side ad insertion. It's still important that you don't swamp either the primary ad server or the SSPs, and so implementing a sophisticated solution that allows you to pace those calls in an efficient manner as close to the point of the ad break as possible is pretty key. And so a lot of where we have been working is on those kind of features. And I have to say, whilst there has been an explosion of vendors talking about both server-side ad insertion and server-guided ad insertion, very few of them can actually point to real-world, in-life deployments at scale. And that's where we're particularly strong. We're trusted by some of the biggest media owners in the world to deliver consistently at scale.
When we've spoke before, Tim, it makes me feel as though the elasticity in your presence allows you to catapult the brand beyond the competitive horizon. And just looking here at some of the things for us to talk about, new ad formats, interactive opportunities, when you've got that platform of stability and credibility based on a legacy within this arena, I'd imagine that means you can be braver about the nature of conversations that you're having with the market.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about new ad formats and interactivity. Interaction is a key topic across anything that's a kind of more IT-based content delivery platform. When it comes to ad insertion, that's a massive opportunity. What would be examples of kind of new ad formats and interactivity that you guys are looking at, considering, or have recently implemented?
I'll probably defer to Tung on that, because a lot of what we do is providing the data to enable some of the things that Bedrock is working on.
So I'll give you an example. QR codes, it's coming some kind of standards. Even it can be a little bit disruptive to get your phone during your live and try to scan the QR code. We're going to disappear within the next 5 seconds. But I think there's a lot of things to be done on interactivity with the remote control and keep into a laid-back experience. And I think that's things to be done, and build the whole workflow to make sure you can get the proper interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one of the things that Bedrock have looked at a lot recently is the device ecosystem. I think that's the terminology used within Bedrock, and it's a huge topic no matter what the terminology is within the sector anyway. Other organisations really capitalising now on something you've just talked about, which is the number of devices that are collecting data about you and your proclivities at any one moment in time, even if you're not interacting with that device. What about data and analytics when it comes to the position that you guys feel like you're in now to have more precisely targeted ads? Is that significantly changed recently, or in a much more advantageous position when it comes to the nature of your propositions?
I think that it's still related, to the cookieless, where the buyers have less and less signals from who is consuming the content and who is targeting the ads. So it really relies on first-party data, so broadcasters, first party for the broadcasters, and that's going to be enriched with partnership with retail data. That's why you can get really a high value of that impressions. Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, and from our perspective, it's always been about ensuring that the broadcasters and media owners retain control. So essentially any data that the broadcasters are able and wish to use for targeting obviously in a GDPR compliant manner, we are able to make available. But equally, we're able to allow the broadcasters to ensure that they're not leaking data and information that they don't wish third parties to be able to action, so to avoid things like retargeting. Yeah. So this has been a capability from day one. I think the difference is that it's being used in a more sophisticated way now. Yeah. The other sort of piece of the data puzzle that's interesting for us is the real-time analytics that we provide that allow for the optimization of campaigns. So within a few seconds of an ad break, the ad ops teams are able to see the performance of that break, the response times from the SSPs, whether certain SSPs are performing worse than others, and so they can tweak those campaigns in real time. And if you're in the middle of a major tournament, finding out 24 hours after the event that you dipped by 10% in your fill rate because one SSP was performing badly, that revenue opportunity doesn't come back. So it's about the intelligent targeting, but it's also about optimizing the campaigns in real time, because that's how you incrementally tick up that fill rate over time.
I'm curious to ask you about this, balancing when it comes to how fast things move, the opportunity to monetize this, that's quite exciting from a commercial perspective, but it's obviously important to balancing ad delivery, making sure that that's a well-timed activity. What kind of counsel do you provide to your clients on how to find the right balance when it comes to ad insertion and delivery?
Yeah. I mean, we're fortunate in as much as a lot of our customers are really the sort of tier one broadcasters and media owners in the markets that we work. So they have a wealth of editorial experience, and for them, the number one priority is actually delivering that consistent broadcast viewing experience. Yep. Monetization is obviously critical, but not at the expense of the viewing experience. So, even if it's pop-up channels where, so for example, in something like the AO, the Australian Open, where you have multiple courts that you're looking to stream with a limited number of linear channels. So there are a volume of channels that are stream only, only available via their OTT platforms. They still have a wealth of experience about the timing of inserting those breaks. So as long as you can provide the technologies and techniques so that the experience in terms of the stitched ads is identical to a broadcast experience, fortunately we work with businesses with fantastic editorial teams that ensure the viewing experience isn't impacted. Yeah.
So you mentioned tier ones there, and then a geography that's on the other side of the planet. This is happening all over the planet, and not just tier ones. At so many different levels.
Absolutely.
Tom, what do you notice across the complexion of all of those different levels and geographies in terms of current trends in ad-supported revenue and technologies?
I feel like, as you know, audience measurement is key. And now all the audience measurements, what also called the industry committee, they now agree that they can measure OTT and linear at the same time. So when someone's going to buy 30 seconds on linear, he wants to have his ads exposed on OTT too. So it means it becomes very complex to sell, advertisements, and you need to make sure that you have the proper technology to still do SSI in a better way, and much more because you can't do a replacement as before. Yeah. You need to be cherry picking on the right spots with the right data, and to increase value also. Yeah.
It's such a dynamic environment. Tim, I've got one final question to kind of wrap us up. What's the potential for ad-supported tiers to be adopted? You talked about the tier ones. How much more potential is there beyond just the tier ones for adoption of this sort of technology? Yeah.
So I guess the subscription-based services are pretty much across the board introducing ad-supported tiers, and I think they have to drive down the total cost of subscriptions that consumers see. So I think that it has largely happened, and where it hasn't happened, we'd expect that it will happen. I think the sort of D2C push on from some of the sports federations is really interesting, because the technology now makes it just as possible for some of the, I don't like to use the word tier 2 sports because I'm a big sailing fan, and some people might class something like SailGP as tier 2, whereas for me that's absolutely tier 1. And the fact that ITV via ITVX have had fast channels with the SailGP in the last season, for me was fantastic.
Happy man.
And the fact you can monetize it. But it doesn't even have to be just the tier 1 broadcasters. Any of those sports federations, the technology is there now for them to deliver the same quality of experience. I think the editorial piece is still important. We do see sometimes it can be jarring if you're in the middle of the action and suddenly a 30-second spot just gets dropped in because it was 10 minutes since the last 30-second spot was dropped in. So I think the need to have the same sort of editorial principles for it to become genuinely compelling for users is important. But yeah, I think that we're just at the beginning in terms of how widely it's going to be adopted.
As a commercial guy, it excites me to think about what the potential is there, particularly the D2C stuff. I know you work with the guys over at Endeavour, and if you look at a post that I think Fred made within the last week about the D2C opportunities, massive field to go and play in that.
Yeah,
so
it's very exciting. Yeah.
So, Tung, any final comments on that topic from you?
I really believe that, for example, events, that's a great feature, because now you can have, we have clients have sports events, boxing events, that are very, very, very popular. Yeah. It drives massive audience, and of course you need to and since sports rights has cost, you need to use all the technical availabilities to do monetization, and SSI is key on that.
Guys, I think you work in one of the most exciting dimensions of the sector that we work in. It's very rare that I have, out of every 3 conversations I have, at least one of them involves the topic that we've been talking about in the studio this morning. So I wish you all the best of luck, not only at the show, but for the rest of the financial year. We'll hopefully be sitting here again next year talking about how much further the market has moved forward. But Tim, Tung, I want to extend my personal and professional thanks and gratitude for being guests on the OTTRED Spotlight podcast, sponsored by Bedrock Streaming.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes.